At the start of the 20th century, the United States was not the world's dominant power, it was a nation still finding its place, watching older empires control global politics, trade, and war. In just a few decades, that same country would reshape the world's economy, dominate global conflicts, and emerge as the most influential power in modern history. The rise of the United States as a superpower was not inevitable, it was driven by crisis, conflict, opportunity, and decisions that changed the global balance forever. For much of its early history, the United States focused inward. Protected by oceans on both sides, the nation expanded westward, built its industries, and avoided deep involvement in European conflicts. While empires like Britain, France, and Germany competed for global dominance, America remained a growing but largely regional power. By the late 19th century, that began to change. Rapid industrialization transformed the United States into one of the world's largest producers of steel, oil, and manufactured goods. Railroads connected coasts, factories multiplied, and cities expanded at unprecedented speed. Economic power was growing, but political influence had not yet caught up. The Spanish-American War in 1898 marked a turning point. What began as a brief conflict ended with the United States gaining overseas territories and projecting military power beyond its borders for the first time. The war signaled a shift. America was no longer content to remain isolated from global affairs. As the 20th century opened, the world was moving toward catastrophe. Rising nationalism, imperial rivalries, and military alliances pushed Europe toward war. When World War I erupted in 1914, the United States initially stayed neutral, supplying goods but avoiding direct combat. Yet economic ties and global realities slowly pulled the nation closer to the conflict. In 1917, the United States entered World War I, bringing vast resources, manpower, and industrial capacity into the fight. The war ended with Europe devastated, its economies weakened, its empires shaken. America, by contrast, emerged stronger, wealthier, and more confident than ever before. Still, the United States hesitated to fully embrace global leadership. After the war, it retreated once again into isolation, rejecting international alliances and focusing on domestic prosperity. For a brief moment, it seemed the nation might step back from the world stage. That moment would not last. The Great Depression of the 1930s exposed the interconnected nature of the global economy. Financial collapse in one nation quickly spread across borders. As economic instability fueled political extremism abroad, the world moved closer to another global conflict, one far more destructive than the first. World War II would become the defining moment in America's rise. After the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941, the United States entered the war fully mobilized. Its factories became the arsenal of democracy, producing weapons, ships, and aircraft on a scale unmatched in human history. Millions were employed. Entire industries were reshaped overnight. When the war ended in 1945, much of Europe and Asia lay in ruins. The United States stood almost alone, its infrastructure intact, its economy booming, and its military power unmatched. For the first time, America possessed not only economic strength, but global influence. With that power came new responsibility. The post-war world was divided between competing ideologies. The Cold War emerged, placing the United States and the Soviet Union in a struggle for influence that spanned decades. Through alliances, aid programs, military bases, and technological innovation, America positioned itself at the center of global affairs. Institutions like the United Nations, the World Bank, and NATO reflected a new international order, one heavily shaped by American leadership. The dollar became the world's dominant currency. American culture, media, and technology spread across the globe, reinforcing its influence far beyond military strength. Yet the rise of the United States as a superpower was not without cost. Wars in Korea and Vietnam revealed the limits of military power. Civil rights struggles at home exposed contradictions between democratic ideals and reality. The responsibility of global leadership brought both influence and controversy. The story of America's rise is not a simple tale of dominance, it is a story of transformation. A nation once focused on survival and expansion became a global force whose decisions shaped economies, conflicts, and lives across the world. And that transformation continues. As the Cold War intensified, the United States found itself locked in a global contest unlike any war before it. There were no clear front lines, no formal declarations, and no decisive victories. Instead, power was measured through influence, technology, ideology, and the ability to shape the future. America's rise as a superpower now depended not only on military strength, but on economic resilience, scientific innovation, and global perception. The Marshall Plan became one of the most strategic tools of this new era. Rather than conquering territory, the United States rebuilt it. Billions of dollars flowed into war-torn Europe, stabilizing economies, restoring infrastructure, and preventing political collapse. The plan strengthened alliances and positioned the United States as a leader of recovery rather than domination. It also tied European prosperity to American economic power, reinforcing long-term influence. At the same time, military alliances expanded. NATO was formed to counter Soviet influence, marking a permanent American commitment to global security. U.S. troops were stationed overseas not as occupiers, but as protectors, at least in theory. This marked a fundamental shift in American identity. The nation was no longer simply defending its own borders, it was shaping the balance of power worldwide. Technological competition became another battlefield. The arms race produced nuclear weapons capable of destroying entire civilizations. The space race pushed innovation to new heights, culminating in the Apollo moon landing, an achievement that symbolized American scientific and ideological leadership. Technology became a tool of influence, signaling not just power, but possibility. Yet the Cold War also exposed the limits of American strength. The Korean War ended in stalemate. The Vietnam War revealed how military superiority could be undermined by political complexity, local resistance, and public opposition at home. These conflicts forced Americans to confront uncomfortable questions about intervention, morality, and the true cost of global leadership. Domestically, the rise of the United States as a superpower coincided with profound social change. The civil rights movement challenged the nation to live up to its democratic ideals. Cold War rhetoric emphasized freedom abroad, while segregation and inequality persisted at home. These contradictions weakened America's moral authority even as its global influence expanded. By the late 20th century, the global landscape began to shift again. Economic competition replaced ideological confrontation as a defining force. Japan and Western Europe emerged as economic powers. China began its long transformation into a global competitor. The Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, leaving the United States as the world's sole superpower, an unprecedented position in modern history. With the Cold War over, America faced a new challenge: how to use its unmatched power. The 1990s were marked by relative stability, technological growth, and globalization driven largely by American institutions and innovation. The Internet, largely developed through U.S. research, transformed communication, commerce, and culture on a global scale. Then came September 11, 2001, a moment that reshaped America's role in the world once again. Terrorist attacks exposed new vulnerabilities and redefined global security threats. The United States responded with wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, expanding its military presence and influence, but also sparking debate over intervention, sovereignty, and long-term consequences. As the 21st century progressed, the nature of power continued to evolve. Economic influence, technological leadership, and cultural reach became as important as military force. American companies dominated global markets. U.S. media shaped global narratives. Innovation in technology, medicine, and energy reinforced America's central role in the world economy. Yet challenges grew alongside influence. Rising political polarization, economic inequality, and competition from emerging powers tested America's ability to lead. The responsibilities of superpower status became heavier, and the path forward less certain. The rise of the United States as a superpower was never a straight line. It was shaped by wars and peace, confidence and doubt, success and failure. Power was gained not just through strength, but through adaptation to a changing world. And as history has shown, maintaining power can be even more difficult than achieving it. In the end, the rise of the United States as a superpower is a story of transformation rather than destiny. It is the story of a nation that moved from the margins of global affairs to the very center of them, shaped by crisis, opportunity, and the consequences of its own choices. Power was not simply taken, it was built through industry, innovation, alliances, and the ability to respond to a rapidly changing world. What makes this rise unique is not just the scale of American influence, but the contradictions that accompanied it. The United States championed democracy while struggling to perfect it at home. It promoted freedom abroad while wrestling with the limits of intervention. Its strength inspired allies, but also provoked resistance. Superpower status brought both leadership and responsibility, opportunity and burden. The American story shows that global power is never permanent. It must be sustained through trust, cooperation, and credibility, not just force. As new challenges emerge, from technological competition to climate change and shifting alliances, the lessons of the past remain critical. Adaptation, restraint, and vision have always determined whether power endures or fades. The rise of the United States reshaped the modern world, influencing how nations interact, how economies function, and how ideas spread across borders. Yet that rise is not a finished chapter. It continues to evolve, tested by internal divisions and external pressures. History reminds us that superpowers are not defined only by their strength, but by how they use it. The future of American influence, like its rise, will depend on the choices made in moments of uncertainty, choices that will shape not only one nation, but the world itself.